This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English. Here's your host, Martin Johnston.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English, episode number 72 and the first episode of 2018. Well, actually it's the second because there was the bonus episode, but it's the first real episode, let's say. And Dan the man is back. Oh yeah. I don't know if that makes you happy or sad, but he's back. In today's show, we don't really talk about anything in particular, just a bit of a chat about New Year, the holidays, because basically I didn't prepare anything because I woke up about 10 minutes before we recorded the podcast. But these podcasts, without preparation, very often the best ones, because there is loads of rock and roll vocabulary. Shitloads, if you want, which means a lot. And too much, if anything, because the quiz will take me ages to write now. But I do it for the love of you rockers and rollers. Anyway, all of the rock and roll vocabulary is on the website, rockandrollenglish.com. So listen to the episode, then go there. I will stop speaking now, and I'll speak to you again at the end. Dan the man, how are you today?
I'm good, how are you?
Oh, fantastic, Dan. New year, new me, and everything like that.
Yeah. What's changed?
Absolutely nothing. Just another shit day of a shit life, really, isn't it?
That's quite a negative tone for the first podcast of the year.
Well, you know me, Dan. I love to be negative. Anyway, we haven't actually said Happy New Year to each other, have we?
Are we going to?
Probably not.
You go first.
I'll say it to the listeners. So, Happy New Year to everyone. Now I'm speaking to Dan because obviously the last podcast was with a 5-year-old. Generally, intelligence level of both of them is the same, though. So, you probably don't notice much difference.
Probably not.
Anyway, Dan, so what did you do for NYE? What do I mean for NYE?
New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve. 31st of December, baby. Mm-hmm. What did you do to see in this new year?
I went to a house party.
Well, I can just tell by the tone of your voice how much you enjoyed that house party.
I did enjoy it. I was surprised I was invited. You know, it was nice to be wanted.
So, was it a mad one?
I left at 1:30. So,
well, that's quite mental.
That's as crazy as I get these days.
Sure. And did you have a good time?
Yeah, it was great. What about you? What did you do?
Well, I had a really mental one. Probably the most mental anyone's ever had, and stayed in all on my Todd. What does it mean if I say on my Todd, Dan?
On your own.
Yep, so I stayed in, did absolutely nothing. The only time I went out was to, drop my mum off. So what does it mean if I drop her off?
Well, you give her a lift, you take her somewhere. She
was going to a mad party, so I took her, and then I picked her up after midnight.
Were you angling for an invite?
So when he says, were you angling for an invite? He means like trying to get one. No, I wasn't trying to get one. I was actually quite pleased to stay in on my own, Dan. As Arnold Schwarzenegger once said, okay, going out, goofing around is fun. But just quickly, goofing around, what does that mean?
Messing around, wasting your time.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's fun and everything. But when you're out, having fun, goofing around, remember, someone out there is getting smarter, okay? Is getting ahead in life.
Okay. So what were you doing then?
I actually did a lot of podcast stuff. I worked on the podcast for the whole night. That is dedication, Dan, okay? Yeah. I did the podcast with my niece, and I did another one, which is another bonus episode, which will be out on Wednesday, okay?
Well done.
Well, thanks.
If you had been invited somewhere, would you have gone?
I don't know, Dan, but what I can tell you is that is some serious, sexy third conditional there. Just repeat that for us, Dan. Don't mess up, okay? Pressure now.
I can't even remember what I said. if you were invited.
If you had been invited, Dan, okay? Because it's the third conditional. We're talking about the past, okay? Dan's getting confused with these conditionals.
You shouldn't put me on the spot like that. I would forget.
Remember, on the spot is like under pressure immediately, without preparation. I think my niece used a good third conditional in the podcast, but you obviously have difficulty with that, Dan.
Did she really?
No, she didn't. That is serious rock and roll grammar. The question was, if you had been invited, would you have gone? And the answer to that is no, Dan, because I wanted to do some shit. Okay. Mm-hmm. So how are you getting on with the new year? So when I say getting on, like, how is it going?
Well, we're only a day and a half in.
Remember, because we're recording this before the release date, but I know you've got some interesting New Year's resolutions. So New Year's resolutions are things like you say you're going to do. Why don't you shed a bit of light on that, Dan? Oh, that's a rock and roll vocabulary. If you shed some light on something, it means basically tell us a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can't remember which ones I've told you. Which ones have I told you?
Tell me everything, Dan. I'm all ears. It means I'm ready to listen, okay? And as are all the listeners, okay? You're quite a mystery figure in this podcast, as everybody knows, because he doesn't like to reveal his identity. Although recently you let me put your Instagram like tag on a post, and we've moved Dan from 60 followers to 71.
Oh, it's incredible. I'm hoping to break the 100 mark by 2024.
Fingers crossed, Dan. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Anyway, so tell us about these New Year's resolutions of yours.
I want to go snowboarding.
Okay.
I want to do a bungee jump, skydive.
But tell us about the method you've done to make sure that you carry out these New Year's resolutions. So carry out is a phrasal verb there. It means do.
Well, they're amongst many others, but I'm getting up at 4:00.
Yeah, but what have you actually done, Dan? Okay, I remember something about a letter. Okay, that's what I'm getting at. Okay.
Listen, you already know what it is. Why don't you just reveal it yourself?
Well, I honestly can't remember the details, okay? So I would like you to shed some light. As I said about 5 minutes ago, but finally the penny has dropped. Remember that if the penny has dropped, it means someone finally understands. So for 5 minutes, I've been trying to make Dan say something which he hasn't understood.
Okay.
Now, penny has dropped.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
I have sent a letter to myself that will arrive at the end of next year.
And when he says he sent a letter, how does this work?
So I found a website where I write a letter to myself because no one else writes letters to me, and then I have...
No one else writes letters full stop, Dan. It's 2018.
Not true. The bank.
I get mine via email, okay? Move with the times, Dan.
Anyway, okay. So I've written this letter, and I've selected a date for it to be delivered by this company, which is December 2018, with my New Year's resolutions on it. Just so if I haven't done them, I will feel like a piece of shit.
Well, we will be doing a podcast when that letter arrives, okay?
Oh, that's real pressure.
I literally cannot wait to read that letter on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, there's far more resolutions than just that, but
and Dan actually paid money to send himself a letter. Okay, so if you want to do something like Dan, then just write your New Year's resolutions to us. Okay, and we will hold you accountable. So, what does it mean if you hold someone accountable, Dan?
I don't know. How would I say that?
I don't know. Basically, it means someone asks you if you did or you didn't do it. So now we are all holding Dan accountable to his list.
And the listeners.
No, but we will ask Dan at the end of the year. So we are holding him accountable, and we will hold you accountable if you want.
Yeah.
If you don't, don't worry about it. Because Dan likes doing stuff like this.
What?
Even though he is a mystery. Holding people accountable.
How is that true?
Well, it's true. Okay. I, on the other hand, have no New Year's resolutions. I'm struggling to get back into the swing of things after this holiday.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to get back into the swing of things, Dan?
To get back into your routine, if you had one, which I highly doubt you did.
Well, I definitely did. If anything, I've spent too much time with you over the holidays and got into the routine of waking up at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Hang on, I'm the one who got you into a routine.
Well, that was years ago, but I was in the routine.
You're following my lead, okay? And I will drag you out of this slump that you're in.
Okay, so when he says the slump, he means like a bad period. But because all this time in the holidays, you know, staying out late and not sleeping, well, sleeping, but just sleeping late, I can't get back into the swing of things. I've got to go to work soon, Dan. What am I going to do?
Well,
Dan is a bad influence.
Get back into the swing of things.
We had a crazy night out over Christmas, though, didn't we, Dan?
Finished at 10 o'clock.
Oh, yeah. Dan wanted to stay out, but I couldn't. It was too late.
Yeah. But you were drinking since 4, though, so that is a good solid 6 hours of drinking.
Well, that's it, Dan. That's it. Anyway, so I have got some shit facts about New Year because I didn't have time to prepare because we agreed to do the podcast at 10:30 and I woke up at like 10:15. Mm-hmm. But in that time, Dan, I had a shower, I had breakfast, I switched on my computer. So, you know, I can do a lot in 15 minutes.
You did all that in 15 minutes?
All of that in 15 minutes. That is dedication, Dan. If you give me a time, I will make it.
I thought by the sight of you just got out of bed.
No, well, my hair's wet. What are you talking about? Anyway, so normally I sort of prepare something for the podcast. That's also why we didn't do a review. I'm pretty sure we have a review, but I didn't have time to find one. So, you know, next time.
This is the worst podcast yet, isn't it?
We mean to start as we mean to go on. That's also a nice term. Like, you basically start as you want to continue. So start shit. It'll be shit all year because then people's expectations are not too high, are they? If you do a really good one at the beginning of the year, people will think, oh, this podcast's amazing. Every podcast will be great. But if you start shit, there's only one way to go, Dan.
That should be the tagline of the show. Low expectations.
Yeah, that's got a good ring to it. Another term we've had a few times. It sounds good. Anyway, so I got a few facts, like 3. Not very interesting, but it's a shit podcast, so we'll have a look at them. Apparently, some people, when they celebrate New Year's Eve in Times Square in New York, wear nappies. What's a nappy, Dan?
The thing babies wear so they can shit their pants.
Yeah, because apparently there are so many people and not enough toilets. They buy adult nappies. Well, in America, they actually say diapers, which I've got written here. So have you ever done that?
What, as an adult, bought a nappy? No, I haven't done that.
Have you ever shit yourself, though?
As a child, probably, yeah. Have you?
I've shit myself a few times, Dan. I think we might have spoken about this before.
Yeah.
But generally, an illness was involved, though. It's not like I just shit myself.
But you shit as an adult. You've shit yourself.
Oh yeah, of course.
Well, please
generally
do
an illness
tell.
because the problem is when you've got like shitting problem like diarrhea. Well, I remember once specifically. It was in the morning. I woke up and I still I had forgotten I was sick, and I thought I'll just do a fart, like a small fart, like a. But because I was sick, that then suddenly turned into something a lot more serious. And I thought, oh, fuck, I've shit my pants.
How old were you at the time?
About 25.
Yeah, I mean, and you're sharing that to the world as well.
That's me, Dan, okay? No secrets, okay?
Oh, you've got secrets, boy.
Me and this podcast, we're one thing, one entity.
So we can ask you any question and you'd be honest. That's a good point.
Well, come on.
The worst questions you can think of, and Martin will answer them.
Yeah, probably not. Well, we answered some of them on the live video, didn't we?
Yeah, but they were quite friendly questions, you know.
Well, were they? What other facts have I got here? So apparently in Russia, they celebrate New Year's. Well, they celebrate the New Year twice, once on the 1st of January and once on the 14th. I know we have some Russian listeners, so, you know, is that true? What do you think, Dan? Is that true? I found it on a website.
Well, how the hell am I going to know?
Just take a guess. It's 50-50, Dan.
Oh, yes, it's true. Yeah.
I'm going to say no then.
Okay.
Okay. It does sound strange to celebrate the New Year twice in 2 weeks. So I'm saying no. Who is right? Okay.
Mhm.
Let's go. Head to head, a battle.
Yeah, okay.
And the last fact I've got is somewhere in South Africa. They celebrate by throwing household appliances off rooftops. So what is a household appliance first, Dan?
Something like a kettle or an ironing board or an iron.
Also washing machine.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, I didn't list them all. I was just giving a couple.
You were only listing the small ones, though. I wanted to emphasise that they are big things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I apologise.
Oh, good. So, if you had to, which household appliance would you throw off? What conditional is that first, Dan? Second or third?
I want to go second.
He's correct this time. It's the second, exactly. So, which household appliance would you throw off, Dan?
That's a great question, Martin. I would go with...
Take your time, Dan. Answer before the end of the year, okay?
the dishwasher.
Oh, yeah. I was going to pick that because I thought that could do most damage because I like impact. And I thought that could really...
You couldn't lift a dishwasher.
Oh, yeah, and you could.
You better pick something small.
Yeah, I'll throw just like maybe a knife. Okay, but can that be classed as an appliance?
It's not, no. It's a weapon.
It's a weapon, sure. That's me. I'm always dangerous, Dan.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Anyway, on that note, I've got nothing else to talk about now.
Is that it?
That's it, yeah. I said start shit, Dan, and then the only way is up. There's a good song about that. The only way is up, baby. Even singing on the first episode. What more the listeners want?
You should be ashamed of yourself. Honestly, this is...
Well, I am. Okay, well, thanks for your time, Dan. Okay, and we look forward to hearing how the New Year's resolutions go.
Well, you've got to pick one resolution. Just give us one resolution that I can chase you up on. Haircut?
Get a new person on the podcast. Haircut. God, I can't even speak. Maybe New Year's resolution is to learn how to speak English, okay?
Okay, yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, thanks a lot. Right, we'll see you soon, Dan.
Speak to you later.
See you later.
Bye.
Okay, so that was Dan the Man and me speaking about New Year's Eve and other shit, really. So let's look at some of that rock and roll vocabulary. At the beginning, I said I stayed in on my Todd on New Year's Eve, which is on your own, basically. You can use it in any context. You say, I'm on my Todd, I'm on my own, as you like. I dropped my mum off. Drop someone off is to give someone a lift. And then Dan asked if I was angling for an invite for the party, which is basically another way to say trying to get. We had the quote from Arnie, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger, saying goofing around. So it's like messing around, having fun, doing not a lot really. So if you go out drinking, stuff like that, it's just goofing around. Nothing really. Dan the Man said that I put him on the spot. We've had that a few times. That's really rock and roll. When you ask someone a question normally and they don't have time to prepare. Dan says that a lot, although I actually do give him time to prepare. Prepare. That's what I wanted to say. I asked Dan how he was getting on with the new year, like to say, how's it going? And for once, the most rock and roll piece of vocabulary was used by me, in my opinion, when I asked Dan to shed some light on his New Year's resolutions, even if he didn't understand. It means just tell us a bit about it. Often used in interviews, sort of like this. I kind of interviewed Dan, so I asked him to shed some light. Tell us. And then I said, I'm all ears, which is a nice way to say, I'm listening. And some more rock and roll English used again by me. Because many people say Dan the Man uses the real rock and roll vocabulary. I think today I win. But I asked him what method he is using to carry out his New Year's resolutions. So that's another way to say do, carry out. And then when he finally understood after about 5 minutes, I said to him, finally the penny has dropped, which is another way to say that you have understood. If you think of a penny actually moving like this, and it's taking time to understand. Now he understands because the penny has dropped. And we had to hold someone accountable. Remember, we will hold Dan accountable for his New Year's resolutions, which means that we will find out actually if he did them. We will ask him. And as we said in the podcast, if you want to tell us your New Year's resolutions, we will hold you accountable. We will mention it in the future if you want. If you don't, continue with your life. No one will die and everything will be fine. Some more rock and roll vocabulary used again by me was when I said I'm struggling to get back into the swing of things. So to get back into the swing of things is to get back to normality, let's say, like routine. Dan said that he will pull me out of the slump that I'm in. So a slump is like a bad period, let's say. And we start as we mean to go on when I was telling Dan about the podcast was starting shit and will continue shit. So if you start as you mean to go on, well, it means exactly that. You start in the way you want to continue. Yeah. And the last one, which isn't very rock and roll, but is useful, is household appliances, which are things like washing machines, dishwashers, irons, and so we're ending the podcast on that rock and roll note, household appliances. But remember, there will be another bonus episode on Wednesday. No 5-year-olds, unfortunately. This time. But I will be speaking to an IELTS expert about the IELTS exam. If you don't know what that is, probably just don't listen to that podcast. It's an exam you can do to basically get a very important certificate in English. But if you are doing the exam, or if you're thinking about doing the exam, that podcast is for you, baby. Anyway, remember, all of the rock and roll vocabulary is on the website, rockandrollenglish.com. I'm going to stop talking now and leave you alone. So have a good week and all that, and just keep on rocking, baby.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.